Okay, we've got a Mini Pro unit here that's got a pad, a foot pad that's popped out. And as you can see, I'll just pull it out because it's actually come out. No, it's not possible to push this back in. Every time you try and push it back in, it pops back out. I'll show you why. You've basically got a rubber seal around the side, basically, that goes into a plate here. Now, once that pops out, pushing it back in is pretty much impossible because you have to put something in there to push it back in from the top. So you actually need to take it apart to put these back in. Now, they're not actually broken, so you just double check that none of these bits, that's supposed to be like that, none of these bits have frayed off or anything like that. So you just double check it all. If it all looks good, there's a bit of wear here. These do wear over time, especially if there's a lot of use, but that's still completely fine. So that can just be replaced out, basically. So just put it back in. But what needs to happen is you've got a plate here which sits slightly under this, and you've got a plate here. Now there's little tabs in here, 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 and here, and there are screws which sit here and in there. So those need to be removed. We will do that now. So this top plate has to come off, basically. So with it upside down, this is the front. Obviously, got the lights here. Remove that one, that one, that one, and that one. Now, with those removed, this front section, this front light section, can actually come off. Stuck in very hard. It's got tabs in there, so you have to use quite a lot of force to get it off, but obviously you need to be careful not to actually snap it. And be careful because it's still wired in, obviously, into the control board for the lights and stuff. Now you can see this exposes this outer edge of this here. The back one doesn't need to be removed. It can be, it makes it a little bit easier, but you can actually get it in without doing all the work of removing the back bumper. Also need to remove the battery, and you've got 4 bolts, so 1 in each corner. You basically undo those 4 and then carefully remove the battery. And the reason you need to be careful with moving the battery because of this grommet that runs around here. Now it can stick to this edge here, which is where it seals against, and if you pull it up too quickly you can tear it. Now it's not a major problem because you can actually just stick it back in again, push your finger along here and re-seal it up, but there'll be a slight break in it, but it should be fine. You can seal it pretty much back up. And just note that these rubber grommets might come out, and they sit, basically you can see here, and then that one's come from there. So those need to be put back in again. You got one over that, one there, and one here, and then obviously you've got the motor ones, so it's the seal all around. So just double check they're all in the right place. I tend to take this off and just place it back in again so it's ready to go. Now with the battery removed, there's this one here, there's this one in here, you can just about see in the darkness, there's one here, and then there's one directly under this plastic piece here. Now this just pulls up and you can move it out of the way. Remember to put that back in before you fit the whole thing back together again. And the bolt is there, so it's 4 bolts in the corner, and that is what's holding the plastic piece now onto the body. Now with those 4 bolts removed, this will now be loose, and just keep a note of how it comes out, and you're going to try and put it in on a reverse angle. As you can see, this bottom corner is very tight to sort of wiggle it out, but you can see the tab there, and that's got to slot back in, and that needs to be flush. When you put it back in, it needs to be flush with these here. It takes a little bit of force, but not loads of force. Now it needs to be flush, and everything needs to look exactly right on the front edge here, and also the back edge, and along the sides. Everything needs to look perfect. If it's not, try and reseat it again, take it out, and keep trying until you get it nice and flat and flush. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time. If you put it all back together again, it's going to pop back out again unless it's sat in there exactly right. And you can see how this sits in here. So now you can just reattach, essentially, your pad. And as you can see, the problem for trying to do it from above when it's all together is you've actually got to get this to seal back around in here, up and under. So this is why you have to take the whole thing apart. Well, a lot of it apart, should I say, not the whole thing. And you just basically run along and reseal along here. Can't do it one-handed, so I'll do that in a second, show what it looks like when it's finished. And you put it back on. So this is what it looks like when it's all put back in. It's all flush. You can see that indentation there where it goes around that screw head, and then you've got all that there. So that is seated correctly, and that basically flips around, so make sure it doesn't pop back out. Don't put too much force on this and pull it back out again. Then you have to seat this into there. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a nice smooth edge along here. There shouldn't be any gaps up in this corner or this corner. You should be able to push it down flat. Then screw these back in, these 4 here. Really important that when you are working on this machine, you try and protect this area. Obviously with the battery removed, it's all exposed, so don't spin it around onto anything. You need to have a flat surface so you're not going to damage this in any way. So just be really careful of that. Now with those 4 back in place, don't forget to put this back on. But one thing you need to check, with all this moving around, you haven't moved that grommet back out. So that needs to be in place. And the original positioning of the wires needs to be in the correct place. And then these have got little tabs on them. And just put them back in and push them into that location so they stay in place. And then the battery, you need to put this back on, checking all the grommets are in place where they were supposed to be. Everything looks correct around the line. It looks all good. So with the battery placed back on now, tighten it up diagonally. So that one, then that one, then that one, and then that one, to make sure it's all dead level and it looks and sits correctly on there. With the battery back on, you now need to push this front bumper or light unit into here. Now it's got little soft pads on the side, you'll see. And you do need to force it between the 2 bumpers so it's compressed pretty much. Push it through there, but also you need to make sure it slots under these tabs correctly. So the bottom side of this bumper is going underneath this tab. The tab should then sit inside this unit here. So when pushed in correctly, all the holes will line up and you'll be able to put the screws in easily. Just make sure it's all flush. Okay, and that's all the screws back in. Just close the flap down. There we are. And that pad now is sat on there correctly, so no longer falling off. All done.